one chain for double. Okay, I've just been told by my phone that that was the maximum size of video I could do, so this may be a two-parter, people. Okay, so I tend to, the height will depend on the pattern. Some people will do 2 chains and 3 chains for a treble. Depends on the pattern, so depends on the height you need to create. Have a play. There is nothing wrong in having a play. So I am only going to do 1 turning chain. So that is literally just yarn over and pull through. So that's just 1 chain, which you can see there. And then we're going to carry on in our first stitch. So I've got my stitch marker in there, which is my first one. You can see that chevron. I'm going to take that out just to make my life easier. So we're starting. This is the chain we just made. Now you'll find that because you've turned your work, your chevrons are sloping downwards and you can't see them very well. So I'm going to try and turn the work a little bit towards you and just really try and help you figure out that that here in the corner of my thumb is your first stitch. This is the turning chain. This is your first stitch, so do not go into that stitch. This is your first stitch that is actually attached to your work here. So we need to go whereas on the chain we only went through the top loop, we need to go through both halves of the stitch. You see that? Let's see if we can separate that a little bit. So you can see 2 strands there. That is 1 stitch. There are patterns that will require you to go through the front or back loop of your stitch. This strand here is the front loop, and the back one furthest to or closest to your tip of your crochet hook is your back loop. So whichever way you're facing, the loop furthest away from you is your back loop. Okay, that will create a ribbed effect if you go through one of those. But for standard patterns, you will go through both sides of the stitch. So both strands, and we're going to go yarn over, through, make your loops a little bigger if you need to, yarn over, through. That's 1. So if it helps, turn your hook down towards the table or down towards your lap or however you want to do it. So see, there's 2 strands there on my hook that I've just put the hook through, but there is technically 3 on my hook. So yarn over, through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, through. Okay, that's 2. Through to the next one. Now let's see if we can help you find those stitches. So if I pull a bit of tension on this yarn, you can see gaps being created between the stitches, and this gap is where your hook needs to go. See that? That is the gap. That is underneath your 2 strands of your chevron, and that is where you're trying to get your hook. So point your hook down a little bit. You've got 2 strands there. Yarn over, through, yarn over, through. Okay, carry on. Pull it a little bit if you need to, just practicing, won't do anything to your stitches. And you want that little bit of elasticity in your stitches. You don't want to pull the tension so hard that you don't let what's called the yarn relax. So you want the yarn to relax. So I put a bit of tension on it, makes it thinner, and that will actually create gaps if you do it too tight. So you want the yarn to relax and fill the space in your stitches. So into our gap, point down a little bit, we've got 2 there, with 3 both sides, through, yarn over, through. Okay, let's carry on, find a little gap, yarn over. For some reason I'm a bit shaky today, maybe I'm just nervous about seeing you all. Next one, yarn over, through, yarn over, through. You're being really patient with me, guys, thank you very much. Oh. Now you see there I've missed one. I've not gone through both sides of my stitch. Now it could be easy if you just take it out, or if you can find the other side, go for it. There we go. And I'm just taking my time. There is no rush. We have all night. Well, I'm sure some of you will probably start this tomorrow because I was rubbish and left it too late to do my coursework and too late to start this. Unfortunately, Adam needed my other phone because he couldn't figure out how to watch what he wants without headphones. So, yarn over through. Now we are on our last stitch, and because we've been clever enough to place a stitch marker there or a bit of yarn, we know that that's our last stitch. Now I'm going to take this out and show you how confusing it can be to know that that is the end of your row. Now if you were to look at that, if you had more than those stitches, sometimes this last stitch can get tucked right around this corner here and sit like that, and then you'd think, well actually that's the edge of my work, that looks nice and straight. Don't be fooled, use stitch markers, because this last stitch can be a bit tricky to identify. So we can see the two chevrons there, and the one below it is our turning chain. So make sure we go through both, give it a little wiggle, do a little wiggle. So we're both through both sides of the stitch, yarn over through, yarn over through, and don't ever be afraid to go back and count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're still on track, guys. So I'm going to put the stitch marker in here, into this side here. And because I know it's there, and I know you're going to be able to follow me, I have faith in you. So that is our last stitch. We're going to do one more row, and then I'm going to show you another stitch. So we can see the difference, and it's all exciting. So we've turned our work. We are going to, what are we going to do next? You tell me. Chain one to get the height. So you see that lines us up to carry on this way. We're not going in this first one, that's our chain. We are going to go into this one. If you see, I'm going to pull it, there is our gap. That is the gap we want, people. In, yarn over, through. I'm really sorry if this disappears off the top of the screen. I'm going to try and figure out a better way of rigging this up. Gap, yarn over through, find the gap, mind the gap. That's what you get for having a family of train drivers. Yarn over through, find the gap, yarn over through, yarn over through, gap. Going a bit quicker now here, don't lose me. Yarn over through, yarn over through. Oh, we did that one a bit quick. Don't feel patronised, people. It took me ages to learn this. Now I did go ahead of my game a bit and go and try and do a granny. I started on granny squares, which some of you may have already tried. Have I gone through both there? Have I gone? No, I haven't. Look, there it is. There is the other half. There we go. Granny square is quite a nice, easy pattern to follow. It's not without its pitfalls sometimes, but we will go through that on another video, I'm sure, if you all like me enough to stay with me. I'm a bit of an acquired taste. Last two, I think. There we go. And now we get to do another stitch. Right, stitch marker. We know it's the last one. We can take that out. Drop that. And find our last one. Make sure you're going through both sides. Don't be afraid to just get your thumbs in there. Whatever you do. Yarn over through. Now see there, my hook nearly went through halfway through the yarn. I'm just going to try and do it on purpose. Now see there, it's not pulling through. You've got caught up. So what do you do about that? Well, the easiest thing is to put a bit of tension on your hook, and that closes down the yarn that you want to go through nice and tight. And then all you have to do is just turn your hook to where the gap is, and that'll come through nicely. It often happens when you're coming through your first loop. I won't be able to do it properly now. Let's start again on that one. When you demonstrate mistakes on purpose, eh? So, gone through, yarn over through. Now, it's usually on this second part that happens. So when you're going yarn over and through, you often catch accidentally some of that yarn. Now, not quite enough for it to catch. Let's try that again. This is going to be faff now. Right, so there we go. So I'm going to try and do this on purpose. I've caught a little bit of that yarn. So see, that is not catching. And in that case, if you give it a little bit of a jiggle, you can see the strand that is catching. You see that one that's going up and completely the wrong direction. There's a little bit of gap now there. So if we create a bit more tension on that yarn that we're working, see, if I pull that tight, we can generally wiggle the yarn through back to a point where it's going. Okay, so we're there, we're back on track. And then if we just go through the second one, give it a little pull. If you haven't gone through a lot and it's quite fluffy yarn, you can get away with just ripping it a little bit, just a tiny bit, and that'll get you through. You don't want to be yanking on big hunks on your hook. If it's literally a strand or two, you can get away with it, but it's sometimes best to just undo that stitch till you're back here, get your yarn back on your hook with that loop. And again, sometimes you might make a mistake of pulling through a strand or two. Just make sure when you pull it, you pull all the strands through and redo that stitch. Yarn over through, yarn over through. Exciting stuff. So we are going to try, that was single in US, double in UK. So that was double crochet in UK terms. We're going to have a go at treble crochet now, which is exciting. Let's double check we've got the right amount of stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10. We're there, people. So we're going to turn our work. Now, this is the next height up in stitch to double crochet. And the way this is different is that we will yarn over before we go through the stitch. So whereas single in US, double in UK, we go through the stitch, then yarn over, through, yarn over, through. We will go yarn over before we go through the stitch. And you'll see why as we do it. So, yarn over. Now with that, I do that mostly with my finger. Some people will like to hold it with knitting hand. I can't do that. So, however you like to hold the crochet hook, there are no hard and fast rules. I hold it like this because that's how I've learned to do it. So, yarn over first. So we've got the yarn over the hook. Then we are going to, now if you keep the hook turned down, you won't lose that bit you've just yarned over. So we're going to, you know what I've forgotten to do? What have I forgotten to do, people? See, this is why people like me don't teach things that they've never taught before. What have we forgotten to do? We need to create the height. So we are doing treble crochet now. So I'm going to do 2 turning chains, because that is how high our stitch is likely to be. So see that? 2 turning chains. So we don't use our turning chains. We're going to go into this stitch here. So forget that one, forget that one. We are going into this stitch. But we need to yarn over first. So yarn over, find the gap. Remember, there's our gap in our first stitch. So yarn over through, same as before, yarn over through, and you'll notice that we now have 3 hooks on our 3 loops on our hook. Now here's where the treble bit comes in. You're going to yarn over and go through the first 2. Yarn over, go through the first 2, and then you've still got 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over through 2. See how high that is? So we needed those 2 starting chains to create that height, and that creates what's called a post. So that is the post of our stitch. Okay, so do that again. This is the hole we want to go into now. See that little hole there? Chevron, hole, losing my tension. So yarn over first, remember. This is treble crochet. Run the trebles, man. 3 base parts of the stitch, yarn over through. We have 3. We're going to yarn over 2, yarn over 2, and we have what looks like 3 stitches, because that is correct. Okay, so yeah. Oh, I've made a boo-boo. Right, perfect that I've made a boo-boo, because this is a mistake many of you will make. Totally intentional, believe me. Not really. So what I've done here is I have forgotten to not count my turning chain as a stitch. So your turning chain will count as a stitch. So if you see here, we have turning chain. If I pull these apart, you'll see a gap. Turning chain, 1, 2 stitches. So we've technically got 3 there. Now if I were to carry on, count with me. We've done 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's our end there. If I carried on as I would now, I would end up with 11 stitches, which would be an increase, wouldn't it? So we want 10. So what I'm going to do is what many of you will probably end up doing at some point, is undoing what you've just done and starting back to your turning chain. So with your turning chain, you've got to count that as your first stitch. So this loop here is not the one we're going into. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, first stitch. So this 3 here, or two that we've done, is counting as our first stitch. So we want to find our second stitch, which is this one here, and we're going to go into that one. So yarn over, forget the first one, through, yarn over, 2, yarn over, 2. Okay, yarn over into the next gap, yarn over, through, 3 on a hook, yarn over, 2, yarn over, 2. We got there in the end. Yarn over into the next gap, yarn over through, yarn over 2, give it a little wiggle, yarn over through, yarn over, find the gap. Oh, I haven't gone through. This is really hard watching the screen at the same time. through, yarn over, through, yarn over, through, in, yarn over, through, 3 on the hook, yarn through, over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. So you're only ever going through 2 loops when you come back on it. Yarn over, through, yarn over, through, yarn over 2, yarn over 2. Okay, and that's what's creating your height, building up height. So yarn over, through, yarn over, through 2, and that kind of gives you a half stitch, yarn over, finish it off. Okay, yarn over, through, yarn over 2, yarn over 2, yarn over, through, onto our last one, yarn over 2, yarn over 2. Sorry, you lost me a bit there. So let's have a break for a second and have a look at our handiwork. So we have 2 rows, if you can see, of single crochet and 1 row of double crochet in US terms. In UK terms, we have 2 rows of double crochet and 1 row of treble crochet. Now we're going to put our yarn markers, because treble crochet gets a little bit frustrating, because you can see here, this is your last stitch. This is the chain we made, the turning chain. So we've got to find out where the top of that is, because that is going to be our last stitch on the next row. So this chevron here, if you're not sure, count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this twisted one here, this twisted sister, you see that? This one here is our number 10, so we want to put that through so we don't lose it, because what easily will happen if we didn't put that through there, okay, you'll find that it goes through and doesn't really attach to anything. Let's untwist that. So that is the 2 chevrons we want to go through, and that will hang loosely there. So that is the post. It's fine if it doesn't feel like it goes there for anything, because that was a chain, not an actual stitch, but that does count as a stitch for all intents and purposes. So we have, you can also count the posts, which are the stitches you've made. These, when we say stitches, we mean these top chevrons. These are the finished parts of your stitch. The posts are what you can see here. So they look like columns in a Roman building. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and your chain that you started with counts as number 10. There you go. Should we do one more row? I think we should do one more row of trebles. So turn our work, and I will remember not to count the first chains. Get our hook back. We're going to chain 2 to give us our height and the first stitch. Some patterns will tell you to chain 3 depending on the yarn and the pattern, but I'm going to chain 2 because I'm working quite loosely here, so 2 is enough. So this is our first stitch, which we've chained up from, so we don't count that first stitch. This one here is the lovely one we want. So yarn over, find the gap, through, yarn over, got 3 on the hook, yarn over 2, yarn over through 2. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit quicker. Yarn over through, yarn over, yarn over through, yarn over 2, yarn over 2, yarn over through, yarn over through, yarn over 2, yarn over 2. Got a rhythm, we can make a song out of this. yarn over through, yarn over through, yarn over 2, yarn over 2, bit minor key there. Oh, so if you are clever about this, I've just dropped my hook, but if I don't pull my finger, I can salvage it. So starting from the right, pick up that loop and pick up that loop, and we were on our last 2 loops, so that's fine. If not, just let your yarn go and pull it to the last loop you got and start the stitch again. Okay, so last bit, yarn over 2, okay, yarn over through, yarn over 2, yarn over through. Now I'm up to an hour already. Is that because I've just taken so long to do everything? I will probably cut this when we go through the pattern, but I'm keen to carry on, so I will do as much or as little, and you can follow as much or as little for today as you wish. As I say, you'll probably do this tomorrow because I've left it too late to send it. Yarn over through, but you love me, so you're patient with me. Oh, see what happened there? So I'm going to leave that there just to show you. I've gone through halfway through the yarn, so give yourself a bit of pull on the tension, turn your hook down, get past the odd bit of yarn, check that you are all the way through, because that won't do that if you are not all the way through, and then back where you were. So was that our last stitch? Looks like it, doesn't it? But we're going to double check by counting, because this is where mistakes happen. So we have 1, which is our chain there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. See, I knew that would happen because we need to find where this last stitch is gone. And if you can see, because I didn't move my stitch marker, it is tucked down there. Can you see that one? So this chevron here, if I can get it to focus properly, that little tiny thing there is our stitch that we want to go into. See? That chevron there. That is your last stitch, and this is where people think they've gotten to the end. If you look at this, it's not quite straight. You've got a dip there, but many people will think that that was their last stitch. So we have to pick it up. So we've got the first one there. If it helps, pull a bit through, find your stitch marker, and get your stitch. It is there, I promise you. So this one here, that's 1 bit, that's 2 bits. So if you use that, pull it up a bit, give yourself a bit of a wiggle. I have no idea why that's ended up so tiny, but it does happen, so you've got to work with it. If you're not happy with it, that would involve undoing 2 rows to get to that. So we are going to do our best. Through that one, through that one. And give it a bit of a wiggle. And create a bit of a hole. So you'll create a bit of a hole, take your stitch marker out. Would help if I did it the right way up. That's the one we want. So give it a bit of a wiggle. See, I've got a hole there. Can just about probably fit the hook through there. Try not to lose it. It's that corner there we want to go through. And try your best to wiggle that through. There we go, we've got it. Okay, so this is the pitfall of working in rows, is finding, no, I've done a single there. I didn't yarn over first, did I, peeps? There are other YouTubers available if you don't want to deal with me. So we've got a little hole there now. Yarn over through. Don't be afraid to be a bit brutal with it. Yarn over through. Give yourself a wiggle if you haven't got a lot of space. Yarn over two. Yarn over two. Now, so it helps, I'm going to put a stitch marker in there. So one in that last one in our chevron. Count back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Back on track. Where's my other stitch marker? There it is. This is our last one there, and you can see I've got a lot more room there. So there are our 10. Now you will have to move this one because you'll be chaining up to here again, and you'll have to put your stitch marker back up there once you've done that. So there is your little swatch. So we've got double crochet and treble crochet. US terms, single crochet, double crochet. Now there are more than that, but we're not going to do that today because I don't want to confuse you. So we are going to look at next increases and decreases. So I'm going to do this in double crochet. We're going to stick with this and you're going to have a play. So let's turn around. We're going to go back to double crochet, so we're not yarning over through first. So we chain one, and we want to increase our stitches to 12. Why don't we go a bit more? Let's say an increase every, no, we'll do, let's increase 3 times, or every other stitch. Let's do that, every other stitch. So increases are pretty simple. You just go 2 stitches into the same hole. So that's our first one there. We've made a chain, so we're forgetting that first one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in theory, if we do every other stitch, we're going to go single, which we've just done a chain for, double, so 1, 2 stitches, 2, 3, single, 4, next 5, 6, single next 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we'll be increasing 5 times in 10 stitches, so we should end up with 15 in theory. Will it work? Let's see. So we're not counting that first stitch, which is here. We're going into this one. So we've done a single, we're going to do 2 into this one. So you see that gap there, we're going to do 2 single crochets in there, in that same stitch. So 1, yarn over through, yarn over 2, that's 1. Now that gap's really nice and easy to see now. So you go through, yarn over through, yarn over 2. That's our first increase, so we should have 3 stitches there now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, see 3 chevrons there? Now we're going to take that stitch marker out and put it in our third one. Just there. That's the one. So I've got 3. So I've done 2 in that one. Next one. Our next gap is this one here. You see that? So we're doing a single into there, and then we're going to increase on our next stitch, which is 2 stitches. So through, yarn over through, yarn over 2, and again in the same stitch. So nice big gap now because we've already gone into it once. So where that last stitch is, you can see where the post is going into it. In that hole, yarn over through, yarn over 2. So we've got